trying to give some interesting variety of.
Sure, this Walters. Look at this over these over here.
That's my name.
I even had to ride. Uncle Buck's ride.
Uncle Buck, right? Norma's Dream. Right.
Yeah, show some of the music.
That's what we're looking at, yeah. That's some of the parts there. Let me see the horn. I'll take the horn back. Wow. Okay, that's a very nice painting of Big Brother Lester. It was painted the year he died in 1999 by the producer manager of DC Curators in Washington.
The repertoire for jazz bands, Catching the Sun dance, morning dance. And so it was like being a rock star. It really was. Because all these young kids who had been playing the music got to see the band, you know. And so it was an interesting, beginning of it. But the whole rock star thing went away very quickly. It just became a band, the musician. And I have to say, another big influence on me was my cousin Alan, because there was my mother's influence at home before I even started playing, just listening to music, and then there were the Parkers who got me started playing, who I wouldn't have started playing had they not started playing probably, and then my first real introduction to jazz came from my cousin Alan, who he used to hang out with his friends and listen to Chicory and Return to Forever and all the early fusion records. And he was one of the first people, I think he was the first person to play some of that music for me. And then from there on, it just, it spiraled out of control, so.
I can't answer why people don't come out to support it, but when I was reading some literature about it, jazz was always, again, it's like I said, it's a cultural thing. It was always in mostly a segregated time period. And you had a lot of musicians that were jazz musicians, but they also, again, were gospel artists, or for instance, like Thomas Dorsey. He played with, with Ma Rainey. He was a blues player before he became a gospel star. And before he, well, a star, but again, before he started publishing gospel music. So there was always a connection. Musicians always played other styles. I mean, Duke Ellington, in his later part of his years, did a lot of sacred masses. He wrote a lot of sacred mass scores. But the music was always there. But I guess probably in the mid-50s or early 60s, when the bebop era came out, it became more of a listening. It moved into the big concert halls. You didn't have the interaction of the smaller clubs and the interaction of the dance hall, the big dance bands of Lionel Hampton, Duke Ellington, and Chick Webb, and that kind of stuff, where the people went to hear the music and they actually danced and they were involved in it. But then it became more of a spectator sport where people sat and listened. It became more Europeanized, whereas you went to the theater to hear the music, and you sat and listened. You didn't interact. You didn't call out, and you didn't move. So that kind of made a difference in how the music was enjoyed by African Americans. And I think when that kind of happened to a lot of it, then they really lost that connection. And then you had in the early '60s, the R&B came into play. So a lot of the jazz artists were, either for survival, started playing other genres of music, because that was what was playing, what was being, you paid to record. Because if you listen to a lot of your early R&B artists, they were blues performers or jazz performers. But again, that same kind of it's kind of a spectator thing, kind of still plays today. When you go to certain jazz clubs, you can't talk. You have to sit and listen. Whereas, again, when I was in D.C., I used to play at a place called Moore's Love and Peace. And it was a very small club, kind of would fit in this entire room here. But the audience members were people that you knew regularly, you saw them regularly, they were there all the time, and they would interact. You'd play something they liked, they'd yell out, they'd talk to you, or sometimes they'd talk to you while you're playing, or or they might dance if they wanted to. But it was an interaction between the audience and the musicians. So, and I think a kind of a coffee house type setting, or a jam session type setting, you don't have that unity or family kind of orientation or feeling. That makes it harder. And again, some musicians just, for myself, when you get home from work, you don't feel like going out. I mean, you don't feel like going out. Because when I was growing up, it was, I guess, there were always these garage bands, we call them, musicians, young guys, wanting to, imitate other musicians, and had garage bands. I mean, a number of them. But in the high school I went to, there were a number of in our marching band, people who had garage bands, and would invite people over to play and the jam and that kind of thing. But I don't know if students do that nowadays or not. I think that kind of interaction is kind of lost. And I think the generational thing of the Wii game, you can play Guitar Hero by yourself. You don't have to have other musicians. So you can do the same thing, like with the invention of digital music. I mean, I can play all the parts of my synthesizers. I can play the bass, the drums, the horns, strings. So I don't need everybody else to play the parts. So it kind of makes it more isolated. What kind of pianos?
Do you have any special?
No, my wife bought me a piano for my birthday many years ago. I love that one. I have digital pianos. I also use keyboards, and they're good. I mean, as long as they're in tune, they're fine. Like synthesizers can be different. You have to really know how to get around on the board and see what you want to do for the different sounds, how to access them. But I'd love to get a Hammond B3 organ at some point. But again, you need space for that, and they don't make those anymore. But that's a favorite instrument of mine. I'd love to have one of those to play. But you have digital keyboards that can emulate the sound, but not really the same sound as their authentic instrument. Sure. And each instrument is different. I mean, each piano is different. I mean, some prefer to play, like I said, Steinway. Some prefer to play Yamaha. Some prefer Young Chang. I mean, it depends upon. Or I played a Boisendorf one time. They had the extra set of octaves on the bottom. That little thing you pick up and has extra bass keys on the bottom. I mean, those are concert, pianos. I mean, those are great pianos. But again, I mean, how often do you get to play a concert grand?
My first gig.
My first gig.
We actually got paid to play.
Oh, jeez. I couldn't really remember, to tell you the truth. I mean, I used to play in church. I don't know if I got paid monetarily for that, but I played. I guess probably my first paying gig was in an R&B group with Scott, and a cousin Tommy was on drums, and there were two brothers named Brian and Kenny Parker who played guitars. We had, who else was in that group? Later on we had Eric Turner playing trombone and a guy named Dougie Williams playing saxophone. And that was our group. We used to play a lot of cabarets. We were still in high school at that time. And we got paid money for that, so it was fun. I mean, I guess the money really wasn't thought of as as an ends to the means, but we enjoyed the playing. I know you can get paid for it was good too. And then we did a lot of picnics and cabarets kind of thing. And then when that group disbanded, joined another group in Frederick. A drummer named Aaron Duckett was in that group, and the guitarist was Davey Gray. Scott and I were still in that group. The horn players, they came with us too, so that morphed to another group. Then when college came about, That group changed and moved to another group. Other players were added. People left. But I used to, gigs around town. Then when I got in college in D.C., I used to work a lot in D.C. and then play with a lot of R&B bands. I also played in musical theater. I also played for dance classes as a means to make money when I was in college. Whatever, the choir director, played in churches, whatever paid, pretty much. So there are a lot of famous jazz musicians that might not have the recognition, but do a lot of concert dates, do a lot of touring, sell a lot of CDs now, but they might not be a household name.
Well, if I had any advice for young folks as far as playing, it's just to play and play what you want to play. I had two other brothers. One is previously deceased. My big brother Lester, and my younger brother Joseph is living in the Netherlands.
I'm Joseph Bowie, the son of W. Lester Bowie Sr., who was one of the 9 original children of Mary Ellen and Emery Thomas Bowie from Bartonsville Road. I'm one of 3 siblings: Lester Bowie Jr., world-famous trumpet player; Byron Bowie, world-famous arranger, R&B specialist. I'm the youngest son of W. Lester and Irksy Bowie.
Well, my father was a high school band director, and he was the only Bowie that left Frederick County, and he married my mother from Little Rock, Arkansas, because he was teaching school down there in Little Rock. And then he was the only child in his generation that ever left home. He started playing with Bartonsville Band about if you said by 1911, he was born in 1905. So he was about 6 years old then in 1911. I mean, I wasn't born until 45, but we talked about my grandfather passed away in the 30s, and so forth. So I didn't even have a chance to play with the band. Just do what I knew about what they did. I was born and raised in St. Louis. Lester was born in Frederick. I played with Lou Rawls and Rita Franklin, of course, and the last person I played for was Gladys Knight and the Pips, Etta James. Yeah, but that was back in the '60s, in the early '60s.
I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, because W. Lester Bowie Sr., my father, from Bartonsville, as you know, got his first teaching job in Little Rock, Arkansas, where he met my mother, Irksy Willingham, soon to become Irksy Bowie, and they moved to St. Louis. And that is where Byron and myself were born, my brother Byron. My oldest brother, Lester, was born in Frederick. Okay, now my father was a great musician. He was a cornet player and music teacher. He had his master's degree in music, and he was a great band director in the St. Louis area, high school bands. And he was also a great cornet player that played in his younger days with the Bartonsville Band. Now, my father, I never heard him play cornet because I'm the youngest child, but I knew him as a band director in St. Louis at several of the major high schools in the area. And that's why we all play music, I believe. My oldest brother Lester took up the trumpet, and very similar to the cornet which my father played. My middle brother Byron took up the woodwinds, clarinet, saxophones, and I had to just take the trombone because we wanted to make full horn section. That was the other, I didn't want to play the same instrument as big brothers. So.
Well, I used to do a lot of recording in the recording studio at Chess Records in Chicago and so forth. But so my recording period ended once there was everybody was getting changed in its intensity and where it was recorded. Like there used to be a heavy recording system around Chicago, but then in Chicago they closed up as many record companies and so forth as anybody else, and they started recording a lot in the West Coast, in LA and New York, and basically rather than Chicago anymore. We were dealing with that, and so D-Funk was we were, because I remember that I had given my brother a car, and when I went up there and we did some gigs in New York, James Chance and the Blacks, that was the name of the band. And so forth, and we got together to do their thing.
Well, personally, I started playing. I started on piano because my father, being a very wise musician, started us all on piano. I must have been 7 years old, and I took piano lessons, and I hated it. And they watched me practice. We had to practice every day. My mother and father would make sure to watch us practice, and it was the same for Byron and Lester. Well, I guess my first major influences were naturally my brothers, because they were already, I was 9 years younger than my next brother and 12 years younger than my oldest brother. And they were already professional musicians as I grew up. I mean, the great influences of Lester with the art ensemble exposed me to expressive, creative jazz. And on the other hand, my other brother was sort of a rhythm and blues specialist and a great arranger, which tied me in with the blues artists, with the R&B acts, the rhythm and blues acts in Chicago, and so forth. Now, probably the turning point in my professional career was my first professional tour when I traveled with the Black Artist Group of St. Louis, Oliver Lake and Company, to Paris, France. We took two Ford vans with us. And some of us took the boat over with 2 vans, and I flew over a little later. But this was actually the greatest experience to date, and I was just like, oh my God. And I was like 20 years old, if you can imagine, 20-year-old young man in Paris. Oh, the women. It was unbelievable. I just blew my mind, so let's stop that. And I remember when we got to Paris, I knew Lester and the art ensemble were living in Paris at that time. This was during the time the BYG recordings, the Actuel recordings, they were living there, and they had a house outside of Paris. Soon as we got to Paris and checked in the hotel, I went out, found the train, and figured out how to catch a train out to Lester's house. And when I got there, they weren't there. I climbed over the fence. They had a dog. I knew the dog. I think it was Kumi. I forget his name. But and I found a bottle of wine. And when they came home, I was asleep on the floor. But that was my first really experience. And then a few years later, I came back with the Black Artist Group. Yes, and my parents were my greatest support system. They didn't question the type of music I wanted to be involved with. They didn't encourage me in one area of music or another area. They tried to expose me to all areas, from classical, rhythm and blues, and jazz. My folks gave us a classical background on piano. Their main concern was that whatever style we chose, do it well, be good at it.
What got me interested in playing gigs and so forth was, not having any money, so I need some money. So I said, let me find a place to play a gig or so forth. I call myself playing green music. That's music that people will pay for, I play for.
Look at my pretty face. Your beautiful cousin. Don't say no more. Now don't say anything you're thinking.
This film is dedicated to Marie Ann Eckerson, who understood the power of music to lift the soul, who also worked to bring the hidden history of African Americans in Frederick County to light through her research and writing. The African American Heritage Sites brochure of Frederick County provides a glimpse of more than 2 centuries of African American heritage in our area and presents a new opportunity to experience the past. Feel the heat of smelters at Catoctin Furnace, where expert African metal workers helped build our nation by forging an array of iron works, including cannonballs used to win American independence. Brochure text was authored by Marie Ann Eckerson, Chris Hall, and Marlene England. Assorted photographs are courtesy of Historical Society of Frederick County, Blanche Bourne, Tyree, Tom Gorsline, Thomas A. Batanza, and the Shaw family. The cover illustration is a montage depicting the Bartonsville Cornet Band and Pleasant View United Methodist Church. Mr. Bowie, father of 12 children, lived in Bartonsville with his son, William, and his family. His wife, Cora Lee Bowie, and him shared 12 children.